Hi, everyone. We are super excited that you are joining us today for Detention.
Thank you for being here, everybody. Today we are joined in detention by Paula Findlay. Paula Findlay is a Canadian professional triathlete and a 2012 Olympian. Some of the highlights of her career: she was the champion of Challenge Daytona and Indian Wells 70.3 last year. She is the North American 70.3 champion from 2018. She won the Beijing International Triathlon in 2017. One of my favorite results of hers is that in 2011, she won three of the ITU World Championship Series races in a row, which is an amazing feat. She holds the QOM of the iconic Mount Lemon climb in Tucson, Arizona, established this spring. She co-produces and stars in That Triathlon Life, a weekly YouTube show produced by her partner Eric Lagerstrom. And these are really only a small handful of Paula's victories and palmares. Too many podium finishes to count. Paula, thank you so much and welcome to Detention Hall.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Thank you
me.
for being here.
So, first and foremost, we want to know how you're doing. How are you handling this strange year of little to no racing and lots of social isolation?
No, it's certainly really weird. We're actually doing great though. I'm doing
Awesome.
great anyway. I haven't had a break from sport basically in 20 years almost. So it's almost a relief to have a little forced rest from racing and constant mindset of high performance and getting better every single day, and
I got.
giving myself a bit of a break from that. And as a result of that, I'm actually training really well and feeling really good and healthier than I've been in a long time. So I think there's a lot of silver linings to come of it. And although I'm disappointed we're not racing, there's a lot of cool things that we've been able to do because we're not racing. So we got a puppy. We've been camping a lot. So yeah, as much as it kind of sucks in a lot of ways, it's actually not so bad for us right now.
So you just brought up the fact that like you're training better than you kind of feel that you have in the past, or things are going really well. How do you track that? Is that something that you just kind of go off of feel, or is that something that you get really into the numbers about? Like, what is the percentage of going by data and what by feel?
Most of it's by feel, and a lot of it I attribute to the fact that I'm not injured, and I'm a very injury-prone athlete. And at least once a year, I get a fairly major thing that puts me out for 4 to 6 weeks. So it's pretty cool to have this big block of running. I haven't been injured since last year, so that's big for me. And yeah, I do measure it a little bit based on my watts on the bike and my numbers running, my paces and stuff like that. But we're not doing a ton of super hard workouts right now. So it's less of a comparison of like last year's watts to this year's watts or last year's run paces to this year's, and more just feeling really good and feeling confident that I can go out and run and not hurt myself. And a lot of the years prior to this, I've like had this fear of running almost because of my injuries. Like I don't really want to go out and run. I'm just scared my knee's going to hurt or my foot's going to hurt or an old injury is going to pop up. But I'm at the point now where I can go out and run without worry, basically. And yeah, just string together like a lot of good weeks of consistent running. And I think that's the key to success in this sport. If you have to keep taking breaks and taking time off running, you're ultimately never really going to improve. So I think for me, especially, it's been really cool to like have this giant, long, uninterrupted block and then feeling healthy and happy too, and kind of enjoying the training that we're doing. So
That's great. You've also had some cool bike projects as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your Mount Lemon QOM challenge?
yeah, so I was in Tucson training when all of the coronavirus stuff became pretty serious and races started getting canceled. And I was staying with Heather Jackson. It was sort of her idea to go after the Mount Lemon KOM, and encouraged a bit by Lionel Sanders and Sam Long, their little duo that they
Mm-hmm.
had going. And we're like, well, why can't a female triathlete go get the women's one? So we kind of set out to do it thinking one of us would try to get it. We started at the same time, figured we'd separate pretty quickly. Eric and Monty were both filming it, so they were kind of building it up to be a bigger production than it
Awesome.
actually was. Um, so that it was really fun. I rode really well. It was kind of like right when races started getting canceled. So we were both really fit. Like we'd been training as if there was a race season approaching. So that kind of was like a cool way to show our fitness. And, you know, it wasn't a race, but it was still a good measure of where we're at. And, you know, at least all of the training we did to that point wasn't put to waste.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was not like super, super meaningful. I know it's totally like a Strava kind of cool thing, but
Yeah.
Was good for like confidence and knowing that I can do well over that pretty long effort, because generally I would kind of max out at an hour and start to fade, and I thought she was going to catch me, but I could, you know, hold my own for an hour 40. So that was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you did some test runs first, right? You did a few where you were kind of going up part way. Because I remember when we talked in April or May about it, you knew that like early in the attempt you were a little behind, but then you managed to like catch back up.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, how did you pace it, and how, like when you were behind, like how did you kind of stay on top of that mentally?
We didn't really do a test run. We'd ridden up it a few times, so I was familiar with the road. But Eric was actually comparing on Strava. You can like do a comparison of your time to the old KOM holders' time, QOM. So based on his analysis, he had like had checkpoints up throughout the climb of where she was at certain points. So he calculated that I was like behind at certain areas, or at the beginning anyway. And I just tried not to really focus on that. Like ultimately it didn't really matter. And based on my calculations, like when I'm doing hard efforts, I think a lot about like time, pace, you know, power, stuff like that, like just to take my mind off the pain. And based on my calculations of what I had left to do, I was on pace to do it. So when he told me I was like minutes back, I was kind of still thinking that it was possible to do based on how much I had left and how fast I was going, stuff like that. So yeah, there was a little bit of awareness of like what I needed to do to get there, but mostly it was just going out and going hard as long as I could. But the altitude does get to you, like it climbs fairly high. So at about an hour, my power dropped quite a lot, and you'd expect it to drop a bit just because it's such a long effort. But I think I was like breathing way heavier at the top, so that definitely played a factor too.
That's a huge amount of mental game to have in such a tough climb. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a long way, but it was fun with Eric and Lottie there too.
Yeah, I bet. That's great.
So you kind of covered this a little bit already, because you know you said that you've continued to train, you've continued to ride, you've continued to run. So I'm guessing that you haven't completely shut it down for the year. But what are you kind of training for at the moment? Are you training to just stay consistent? Are you focusing on a certain aspect of your game that you're trying to improve? Like, what is the thing that is getting you out the door at the moment to go do your workouts?
We're not really, our training volume is significantly reduced, but we're still at a fitness level where if a race were to happen in a month, we could be ready for it. So we're not super out of shape. Our coach gives us a training schedule, so we kind of just follow and do what he says, but he's also very understanding that everyone feels different about this, and everyone's in different countries. He coaches a lot of ITU athletes in Europe, so it's like the situation's different depending on where you are, and a lot of people are super motivated and are optimistic about racing soon, and others are like, there's no way it's going to happen until next year. So he allows for some flexibility in different people's opinion and feeling and stuff like that. So I don't know what gets us out the door. A lot of the times we see a hard workout on the schedule and we're like, what's the point? This is dumb. But we always feel better after we do it. And I think even though there's no races, there is still some benefit to improving yourself this year, and that'll carry over to next year. It's not going to all go to waste. Like I said about the running, just me being consistent this year definitely is going to like set a foundation for next year for whenever we race again, whether that's in a month or in 6 months, I don't know. So yeah, we all do the sport because we love it, and most people do it because they love racing, but you also have to have some enjoyment in the training and in the process. So that's kind of where we find our motivation to get out the door. And we have each other, me and Eric, so that helps a lot too. We're not going out solo every single day. That would make it a lot harder. I think we'd skip a lot more sessions if we were on our own. But if one of us is going for a run, the other one's going to go too. So that really helps us.
Peer pressure.
little bit of peer pressure. Eric won't let me go do a workout without him coming. Like I'm still an athlete too. So yeah, we help each other a lot too.
That's great. So what about daily habits? We have a show on Twitch that we call Morning Routine that kind of combines journaling and meditation and all of the strength that you never do. Something that Chris cooked up. Yeah. Do you have any daily habits that you feel like keep you effective?
To be honest, I really wish I had done a better job up to this point of doing more strength and yoga and all the things that you're supposed to do and you don't have time for when you're training hard. So, but I don't know, that it's just hard to for me to get motivated to do that. I'd much rather go out and run or ride. So yeah, ideally would have had a better yoga routine or something like that. We are really into coffee. We have that routine every morning. We kind of spend 20 or 30 minutes making sure that Eric makes the perfect cappuccino for both of us.
It's a critical routine.
Part of our day. When we're not at home, we like going to coffee shops and sitting outside right now, social distancing and all that. But
right.
The dog that we just got, the puppy, has been a big project. That's kind of become a daily habit, I suppose, or a necessity of taking him walking every day, several times a day, paying attention to him, feeding him. It's kind of the first time either of us have had a responsibility of another live thing besides ourselves. So taking away a bit of the selfishness of training and thinking about how we feel all the time, because he is very needy.
What are your priorities for training him right now?
He's still in the puppy phase. He's about 6 months, so he is pretty well behaved. We're still working on getting him to come every single time and walking on a leash without pulling. Those are the biggest things. But in terms of general behavior, he's a really good dog. We can leave him out when we go train and he doesn't destroy anything. He just sleeps and waits for us. So we're pretty lucky. And he's a German wire hair pointer, so he is a hunting dog with this crazy instinct to sniff and run around fields. So when we go walking off leash, sometimes he gets too distracted to bother listening to us when he has to come. So that's his biggest downfall, but just takes lots of treats, and he definitely listens to Eric better than me, because Eric's a little more firm with him and I let him get away with more things. So.
You were saying before we went live that that daily walk with him, you feel has perhaps been contributing to some of your run consistency.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I actually read a post that Mary Kane did, because she has a dog as well. And walking, I think, really helps with running injury prevention, just because you're going slower and you're working out all of the niggles and tightness and sorenesses that may have come overnight. I always wake up walking down the stairs feeling like an old person, and there's no way I'm running that day. But I take the dog for a 30-minute walk and I feel so much better at the end of it. So yeah, slowing down. A lot of us don't start our runs with a walk because it just takes time and we just want to get the maximum number of miles in. But I think there's something really healthy to slowing down and going for a walk, and something I'd never do if I didn't have a dog. It just feels kind of silly to go walk around for half an hour, but it definitely has had some benefits, I think. And I've probably walked hundreds of kilometers already since having him. So it's kind of an interesting silver lining, I guess, of having a puppy and him needing lots of attention and exercise.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have one question in chat already. Kirby, who is with us in Tucson, says that she's guessing from what you said that you have the same coach, from the comment of what your coach is putting on your training plans. She wants to know about how similar your training plans are.
Eric and I? We actually have the exact same training plan.
That's great. So you can do everything together.
Kind of funny. As racing starts up and we're a little more focused and detailed oriented, we get different schedules slightly, but in general it's pretty simple, straightforward, and it's part of the reason we really like having the same coach, is because we can do the same sessions. And Eric usually has more run volume than me, just because he can handle it. He doesn't get injured as much, but for the most part we're doing the same thing, and it does help us a lot, like I said, with the motivation and getting out the door. And today we had 7 by 3 minute hills hard, so I would start right behind Eric and try to kind of keep him in sight, and he would try to not let me pass him. So I don't know, we motivate each other to go hard and do workouts like that. So yeah, the training's similar. And also, sorry, I'm going on a rant, but our coach coaches a ton of ITU athletes as well. And I think currently we're doing pretty much the exact same program as them. So it's not that different racing 70.3 versus ITU. I think in terms of the training, we do similar schedules year round. So yeah, I don't know, 70.3 is getting faster and faster. So it's actually not all that different than racing Olympic distance in terms of the training.
It's great.
Since you've kind of stepped up to that distance, which I know you've been doing for a while now, but what, the speed requirements are getting closer and closer. What has been the biggest change in the training? Like what's been noticeable to you that's been different in your training in focusing for 70.3 from ITU?
I think the biggest difference is bike volume and just doing more work on a time trial bike. I'm used to riding my road bike all the time and working in draft packs and doing short intervals up and down like VO2 stuff versus 70.3. You have to kind of sustain a fairly uncomfortable power for a long time. So just a little bit of a different energy system. And we still do a lot of hard efforts on the bike and different times a year, lots of intensity as well. But I think in general, it's just been a little more bike volume, a little more focus on the bike since that's the large majority of the race. Yeah, other than that, our swimming is pretty similar. Although I think swimming's a little more important in ITU to keep your speed and it's just a lot more competitive, but our coach still gives us pretty much the same volume as when we were racing ITU. So we swim a ton when pools are open. Running's pretty much the same, maybe a little less speed, a little more volume and endurance, but other than that, it's quite similar. And like you said, there's a lot of ITU athletes stepping up to 70.3 now, so that distance is just getting more and more competitive and fast. So you kind of have to keep your speed no matter what. And we're not really interested in switching to Ironman anytime soon. So yeah.
Very good idea.
I agree.
It's a long race. So a lot of our athletes have been focusing on what they really perceive as like their limiters during this time. Is there something that you're really trying to like dive into? Is there a like piece of your race that you're really trying to hone in on right now?
Like a weakness that I'm working on at the moment? I guess that would be running. Running has always been my strength. That's how I won all my races in ITU in the past, like in 2010, 2011. I had like a track background, so I always had a really good kick finish, last 800, and that's basically how I won every ITU race I did that I won, not all the ITU races. But since then, I've been injured a lot, have had giant gaps in training, and I think the run's no longer my strength, and I want to like bring that back because I think that's how you win races in 70.3 as well. Ultimately, is like having a solid ride and then being able to run really fast off of that. So this consistent block of running has been my focus, and running's my favorite of the three, so it's not super hard to put an emphasis on that right now. And pools are closed, so there's more time for it. And yeah, I think it's kind of a general answer. Like running is a big, huge part of the sport, but that's definitely the thing that's held me back a little bit over the last 5 or 6 years and since starting 70.3. So yeah, that's been my weakness that I'm working on.
What event did you run in your track background?
I did like the 1500 and the 3000 was my main focus. I went to school at University of Alberta in Canada, so our indoor track season only went up to 3,000 for women. I probably would have raced longer if there was a 5K or something, but yeah, 3K was the longest. So I also did a little bit of 800 and when I was in high school, so lots of track running. And I think it definitely helped with my speed and my development as a runner, but also made me fairly injury prone because we did a lot of track workouts as a teenager. So it's hard on your body.
I know it's crazy like at this point because you're like, oh, I'll probably go, to the track or do speed work, like true speed work, like once a week, maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
And then you think back to like track practice in high school and you're like, what were we doing?
Like 3 days a week.
Day.
Right. There's no way I could recover from that.
It was pretty crazy. I mean, I was swimming competitively, so that was like 11 workouts a week, and then I'd go to track 3 days a week. And
oh my God.
all those runs were hard, and I didn't run except for like the hard track work. So I like got my fitness from swimming, went hard on the track, and like made me a fast athlete, but also not very like robust, sustainable athlete. So yeah.
So we're gonna turn to your swimming here for a little bit, and look at the swim analysis that you very generously allowed us to do back in February. But before we get in there, would you mind like talking to us a little bit about your swimming background? Like, you grew up competitive swimming, but like hearing about like what events did you ever deal with, like high school burnout while swimming or any of that stuff?
Yeah, sure. I started swimming when I was 11 years old, so a little bit late for competitive swimming. A lot of my friends started, when they were like 5 or 6, and that's all they did for their sporting career. So I swam competitively all the way through my first couple of years of university. So that was like my main focus. I never really identified as like a triathlete, even though I was racing some triathlons. I was always like swimming was my main focus, and I was actually a breaststroker, so decent at long distance freestyle, but definitely not very. That wasn't my focus. I wasn't awesome at it. 400 IM was also another event I was good at. I didn't love it, but I was good at it. I think a lot of breaststrokers are good at 400 IM. That's like catch up in the breaststroke. Yeah. I sort of hit a little bit of a burnout in university, and that's where I found triathlon to be really helpful because I was having a lot of success both running and in triathlon. So my friend group was in swimming, and I was not interested in like quitting swimming or anything, and I really enjoyed it, but I just wasn't the fastest. I was never going to go to the Olympics as a swimmer, so I recognized that. But I think it definitely set me up well for having success in ITU because the swim is so important. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a swimming background, it's really hard to do well at ITU racing. So yeah, that's as soon as I started doing triathlon, I definitely switched my focus more to like long distance freestyle training versus breaststroke, obviously. But
that's useful, right?
Yeah, it's still not the best fit. I don't love watching myself swim freestyle. I don't think I have a very beautiful stroke. There's a lot of little things that are uneven and stuff with it. So it was really cool to watch the analysis. I don't get the opportunity to see myself swim very often, except when Eric films me. And even then, it's not like a critical analysis. It's like all the little parts. So yeah, it was really interesting to see. And so thank you for doing that.
It was all our pleasure. We were really lucky to get a chance to do it.
It's great.
All right, let's jump over there, and we'll kind of look at a few sections that we kind of identified beforehand that we'll talk about, and then we'll see if there's anything that if anybody from Twitch wants to post any questions about that too. So yeah, Molly, do you want to take us over to?
You're gonna share, yeah.
I'm gonna share. I share first, right?
You share first.
Okay.
I'll let you know when we've got the. Here we go.
Oh wow, cool.
Hey.
This is in Tucson.
This is back in Tucson.
In that weird long lane.
Yeah.
No, that was one. Watching you deal with the long lane every time, like you would get to like basically 23 yards, and then you would like pick your head up. And like you see yourself do it in the video a few times. It's pretty like
because the lane was like 28 yards.
Yeah, it's very, very.
Hit my heel.
So one thing that Molly and I picked up and then talked about in the analysis, it's not really happening on this stroke too much because right here this is a breathing stroke, and so you're rotated to the side. And what we had noticed was that you really bring your hand forward very quickly. Very soon, and not happening too much here. And the reason that I'm stopping here is because in the swim analysis kind of rubric that we use, it breaks everybody into 6 types, and you're very much the swinger type, is what they call it, where tends to swim with like a slightly higher turnover. Very often says things like, "Oh, I have a really ugly stroke." But then like swims really fast, clearly out near the front of the front of any race that you do.
Often drafting off of a pool swimmer with a really pretty stroke.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm good at drafting.
Yes, perfect.
And so right here you can see, and the thing that we usually urge people to do is to try to keep that elbow, like to keep the hand behind the elbow until the elbow gets up to the shoulder. So you can kind of see right now that that hand is coming forward, and what that forces is like a real big angle in the elbow that then is going to end up with a little bit of a crossover at the front of your stroke.
Mm-hmm.
But like the crossover you're making work for sure, and it's not really affecting too much about your stroke. But it was gratifying to hear you say like, oh yeah, I have had some shoulder impingement problems, because basically what's happening is because you don't really bring your arm up over the water very much, and we'll see that when I get a little bit closer to the water here. Yeah, that's a breathing stroke. That's you looking for the wall, like where is it? So right here, you can see that you're really not clearing the water very much.
Yeah.
And so to bring that hand forward, you're actually having to bend the elbow, and that puts a lot of load on that right shoulder.
Right.
And then same thing here.
Yeah.
You can really see that bend. I'm kind of cherry picking a little bit because this is a sighting stroke. So, maybe it's not going to happen all the time. But right here, we see the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think what Molly and I would suggest is that, probably getting into that classic like high elbow position that you see like real like smooth pool swimmers end up is probably not the thing that's going to be effective for you, and is probably just going to lead to more shoulder impingement. But straightening the arm out just a little bit and thinking about bringing that elbow forward sooner might be something that would both alleviate a little bit of that shoulder tension and get rid of the crossover at the front. Molly, do you want to jump in and add anything, and I will try to navigate the screen?
Yes. So the thing I really wanted to point out is if you can go a couple of frames back, we get such a great view of like perfect sighting position, which I would love for everybody who's watching to be able to see. Where you're picking your eyes up just a little bit and you're looking straight forward. And I think that this is something that we get asked a lot. We just did an open water clinic last weekend, and people ask us like, what does it look like when it's done properly? And this is what it looks like when it's done properly. That's a really great example of excellent sighting. So I just wanted to give everybody a second to see that, because that's something that I know a lot of folks are trying to work on, and we don't get much video of that.
Yeah, I think I try to like sight with my mouth still in the water and then breathe to the side.
Yep,
so
exactly.
It's kind of one motion of sighting and then breathing.
Exactly.
Right there.
Yeah, like that.
And if you don't pick your head up to exhale forward, then you don't throw your body position off and let your feet sink down to the bottom.
Right.
Which
yeah. If you try to breathe to the front, you're definitely gonna go like this. Right?
Yep. Exactly. And it's so hard. Yeah, it looks great though. So thanks for that.
Not all bad.
No, it's very good.
Yeah. And that's another thing that I think Molly and I would both rush to point out is like, you're obviously an excellent swimmer. Like it's working. And, when we do these analyses, first of all, it's in slow motion. We're able to like find like frame by frame.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're sort of we're cherry picking the moments where we're like, this is not where it's working. But like, this body position right here, like we would kill for any of our swimmers to have this perfectly horizontal body position.
Mm-hmm.
You're lined up exactly with the lane line. And you don't over kick. You have a nice controlled, powerful kick that's not too much or too little.
Head position's great.
Yeah. And you're generating a lot of propulsion. I like in the analysis, I did some like very minor, like I was like, okay, your elbow is a little bit below your wrist here. You're kind of pressing down a little bit, but we can also see, but at this point, this is where you are really grabbing a hold of the water, and you are doing a great job of putting it back behind you.
Yeah, I definitely see the elbow drop though in the crossover, which is not efficient. And when you try to fix a crossover, it feels like you're swimming like this.
Yeah,
right?
it's like swimming over a surfboard, right?
Very subtle change is going to feel weird, but not actually look that different if you filmed yourself, right? So
swimming backwards is always good.
Yeah. Just keep
that's
doing
ugly.
that. And the crossover is really minor. Like that's basically right at center line right there. Mm-hmm. So it's just a little bit. I think one of the things that I noticed was really trying to tighten up the fingers of that right hand a little bit. Okay. Like that was something that, because that's one of those things where it's a tiny amount of slippage repeated thousands and thousands of times.
Totally, yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's because I definitely swim a lot better with paddles, and I don't think, I mean, obviously you're going to go faster with paddles, but my increase of speed with paddles is pretty drastic. So that's probably why.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where you're like, okay, the delta shouldn't be this much. Like right. I'm exactly the same. Like, and so I'm like, okay, so I'm probably losing something in my catch. And then for me, it tends to be kick mechanics. I've got a little bit of a lazy 6-feet kick that doesn't keep me as horizontal as you, for example. And so like I'm fighting more drag than I necessarily would be.
Right. So putting a pull buoy in helps a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did we catch you holding your breath a little bit?
We did.
Yeah, that's what you did say that.
Yeah.
I've never noticed that, but that's interesting. It could be why swimming feels so hard.
Yeah. And it's minor, but there's a few moments like that. This particular stroke cycle is one where, so you exhale and then you kind of stop for a bit.
So you're just telling about the bubbles, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Because you can see that there's just no, and then like a lot of swimmers, then you do a big exhalation at the end.
So you should really just be like constantly exhaling through the whole time. Okay.
Yeah. And we sometimes this gets overdone. Like we pointed this out to HJ once, and she went from like holding her breath to like perhaps a bit too much of an exhalation.
Yeah, because like having your lungs full of air makes you float, right?
Well, it makes your chest float.
Empty them. Makes you what?
It makes your chest float though. And that's one of the things. So like buoyancy in your chest goes up, but then you're having to fight that a little bit because then chest will go up, but your legs will drop.
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, you've trained with HJ, so you know that she's like, all right, let's do that 110%.
Right, exactly.
And then she actually got herself to like hyperventilate a few times by exhaling too much.
Just 100% HJ.
Right, just enough.
Was there any other like stuff from here that you wanted to like revisit, or any other like things as we've just been looking at it here that kind of that like leaps to mind for you?
No, I liked the over water view from the side was super helpful, just because I didn't realize how forward I was coming like this, and that definitely makes sense with this shoulder issue I've had, because honestly my left shoulder was hurting before coronavirus, and I thought like, okay, 3 months off swimming, that'll fix it, and I go back to the water and it's like the same as it was before. So that's kind of interesting too. It's like definitely a mechanic thing, right? If it's not like still inflamed from March, so
right.
I think that was super helpful to see for sure.
Yeah, I think both of us would want you to kind of like here's a great example. Like this is a non-breathing stroke. It's the left arm that's over the water, and you're really not rotating very much to that side. So that's part of what's keeping the arm close to the water. So maybe a slight more rotation to the left side and straightening that arm out, and thinking about just like throwing the elbow forward might help.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't been swimming since I watched this yesterday, so I'm kind of excited to actually get in the pool again.
And if Paolo wants to send us a cease and desist, he can go ahead. Tell us that we're totally wrong.
I haven't showed him yet.
Okay. All right, Molly, I'm going to stop sharing. Do you want to switch
I
us
will move
back
us back to
to?
interview. Did you stop?
Do I get a go ahead?
Yeah, I already moved us back. Okay, there we go.
Oh, okay. Here we are. Um, so one of the things that both Molly and I wanted to know was like, so you are one of the better swimmers in the sport, and we're interested in like how much time you spend like thinking about or working on technique, or like what are your focuses when you go to the pool?
Hmm.
Um, well, our my coach Paulo has sort of changed my mentality of swimming a bit because his philosophy is just swimming more, doing more volume. You're gonna get faster. It's all about like swim fitness, and he always has like interesting different drills with different paddles to improve catch efficiency and things like that. But in general, it's just like doing a lot of volume and fairly form sets. So I've gotten used to it now, but a lot of the time you'll show up at the pool and it's like 2200s to send one to four, like super mind numbing sets. Um, and that was a bit of an adjustment coming from a swim club background where all the sets are very interesting. You're doing IM and you're doing kick and pull, and like the coach is talking in between sets and it goes by really fast. But I think it's gotten me a lot fitter at swimming, and I definitely was faster when I was swimming competitively and focusing just on swimming. But then I had a definite like downturn the last like the before I was coached by Paulo, where I was swimming a lot slower and kind of frustrated and wondering why. But when I started training with him and just increasing my volume to like 5K swims every single day, I got better. So there
Hmm.
wasn't a lot of technical feedback like I just had with this, but a lot of just actually swimming and not using a pull buoy whenever you get tired and kind of like just, not fun stuff, but
Right.
it's been effective. So unfortunately, I think to get better at swimming, you just have to swim a lot and more than you want to. And there's some component of technique and feel and stuff like that, but ultimately you can't just go to the pool and do 1,000 meters of drills and expect yourself to get faster.
Right.
So that's kind of my philosophy, and it sucks. It's not the most fun way to train, but Eric and I both have pretty good success swimming in triathlon, so I think it works. But every coach has a different approach, and
Hmm.
I think a lot of the time fixing something technical like what we just went through does make a big difference. So that's a big part of it too. But you still have to do like the hard, boring threshold sets in the pool.
Right.
Yeah.
So not too
Yeah,
surprisingly, oh, sorry, Chris, what were you gonna ask?
no, I was gonna say like I feel like a lot of the time that like yeah, the technique work is more about like longevity and durability. So like it's something that allows you to to swim the amount that you need to swim.
Yeah.
Because you guys are swimming 6, 7 days a week, probably like I don't know, 30 to 30 to sometimes 40K a week, I imagine. Like,
Yeah, in the bigger weeks, usually it's about 30, and it's different because like we're swimming yards in the U.S. versus long course meters when we're in other countries. But yeah, it's a lot of volume. So you're right. If something is not right, or you're swimming like with a bit of a flaw, that can
Hmm.
like over thousands of repetitions turn into something an injury. And if you're not efficient, it's just you're working harder for a lot of hours a week than you need to. So yeah, I don't have the most beautiful stroke, and there's a lot of things I can fix, but um, yeah, I think it has been sort of working.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not the fastest swimmer. I'm not like Lucy Charles or guaranteed at the front pack every swim. So yeah, it is something that I do want to be better at, even though
Hmm.
I'm already decent for triathlon.
So yeah, no, I was going to ask you a little bit about the work that you do with your coach. So Chris and I talk a lot about the coach-athlete relationship because that's a lot about what we do here at the endurance school, of trying to get athletes to think about, how they approach the sport and how they collaborate with someone. Can you tell us a little bit about like what works for you and what you look for in that relationship for you to improve?
Yeah, I've had a lot of coaches through my career,
Hmm.
and some by choice, some not. And
Right.
moved from ITU over to 70.3 and moved to Boulder and left Boulder. So like a lot of different scenarios, and every coach I've had is so different, and I've learned a lot from each of them and sort
Hmm.
of taken what's positive and brought it to the next person. I was coached by Siri Lindling for a couple of years, the
Awesome.
most positive, amazing person ever. And I went to her when I was at a real low point in the sport and didn't really want to do it anymore. I wasn't enjoying it, but she like totally brought me back to life and brought me back to loving it again. So I needed
great.
her energy and her positivity at that time in my career. Shortly after that, I was coached by Neil Henderson, who's very much a numbers person and very scientific and cycling focused. And I think, less personality than Siri. He's not on the pool deck every day cheering like Siri is, but brought a lot of other great things to the table. Like I improved my cycling enormously, I think, with Neil, and through lots of like very detailed bike workouts, power numbers, testing, stuff like that. So Siri didn't work with power really at all, but Neil did. So that was really helpful. And Paulo is my coach now, and who I went to after Neil, and is kind of different altogether. He's not super focused on power, but will be if you want him to be. And it's the first time I worked with a coach where I'm not actually in the same place as him all the time. And so it's like kind of remote, but still very connected in terms of like responsiveness, like texting whenever, he'll get back to me right away. He doesn't use Training Peaks. He uses kind of like old school styles of, we get an Excel spreadsheet every week with our training on it. So it's not super fancy, or, it's very like, just do your job, and it's not going to be always fun or interesting. It's just a lot of like,
work.
Work. Yeah. Right. And the other thing about Paulo that's interesting is there's no like super big impressive days. Like sometimes you look on Strava at people's training and it's like, holy shit, like how did you do that all in one day? And Paulo's training is just kind of like a lot of pretty hard days back to back, and it makes you really tired and really fit, but insanely impressive. Like we're not going out and doing 8-hour rides or super super big crazy things, but being consistent with what we're doing is kind of his philosophy, and being perpetually kind of fit and then peaking for races when they come. So yeah, that's his philosophy. I've known Paulo for a really long time. Back when I was training for the Olympics, he coached Simon Whitfield for a couple of years, so I ran into him a lot at training camp. So he's kind of like followed my career and knows me really well, despite never having coached me before the last 3 years. So that helped too with the transition. And yeah, it's not fun to switch coaches. Like I don't love it because you're getting to know a new person, and sometimes it takes a year or two to totally get to know them and to have a good relationship with them and adapt to their new training. So I don't like doing it. Sometimes it's necessary based on like your location and your training partners, stuff like that. But when you find one that works and that you like, I think it's good to kind of stick with it and learn or get faster together, like there's a lot that you can develop.
Collaborate, right.
What do easier days look like for you? Like, I like really like that model of like no monster days. And so like the training stress remains like pretty stable from day to day, but I imagine you have easy days every now and then. How often do those come around, and what do they look like?
Yeah, the training template's pretty repetitive week after week, and we'll have like kind of the same block for a month or two, and then we'll get a new schedule one week, and it'll be kind of different than the previous 8. So he obviously has a plan and a method to his program, but while we're in a certain block, all the weeks are very similar. So every Monday will be like a recovery easy day. Saturdays will look the same. Wednesdays will be a tempo run, stuff like that. So it's very predictable. Our easy days are not off though. Like he never gives days off. I think if I asked for one and needed one, I would, I'd be okay with that, especially now with coronavirus. But like the easy Mondays are generally still a 5K swim and a 90-minute ride or something. So it's not off, and I kind of like that. Like I feel better if I'm kind of training through an easy day, like nothing really hard, but still moving and recovery through training. So that's not everyone's favorite thing. I think some people really need a day off, whether it's once every other week or once a month, something like that, just for more of a mental reset. But yeah, as long as you're training well and feeling healthy and motivated, that's his style of program. So
we have a question. We have a few questions from chat. One is about the dynamic of two successful professional athletes in a relationship. Our questioner says, I'm thinking back to the Daytona race and that week's video blog. How do you deal when one person has a great race and the other person's day didn't go as well?
Yeah, that's tough for sure. And it's also, I mean, managing your emotions post race because the other person's really happy and you're disappointed, or vice versa. So you have to be excited for them, but also it's also hard if, like, for the person that had a good race, because you're sympathetic and wish they had a good one, kind of can't really appreciate and be happy for your own win. So
Right.
there is a balance for sure. I think in Daytona, Eric had a mechanical, so it's kind of out of his control. But you just, like, we're used to that day to day. Like, we kind of ride the highs and the lows together. We're not both going to have great workouts every day. We're going to be grumpy sometimes on different days. So it's not totally new to us to, like, have completely polarized emotions. And in general, I think it helps the person that's had a bad race or a bad day to kind of bring them back up, because ultimately we're kind of like in this as a team, and one of us having success is almost just as good as the other person. So yeah, it's definitely interesting, and it has its advantages and disadvantages. I tend to think about Eric probably too much while I'm racing, if he's racing at the same time, and asking people around me who I know how he's doing. And I think in Daytona on the run, I asked Talbot, like, where's Eric? How's he doing? What's going on? Because I couldn't see him, and Talbot told me he had a mechanical. So things like that, like, I'm almost, yeah, taken the distraction away from my own race thinking about him. But yeah, I don't know what the answer is to that. It's just eventually he gets over it, and he's happy for me. It's not like you're jealous or anything of the other person. It's like we both work really hard, and we're both trying to make money so we can buy a house and bed together. So that's the goal, right?
Oh, I have a question about the van life. How can you tell us about the van?
Yeah, we have a Sprinter van. We don't live in it full time, obviously. Well, not all the time.
This is it that you're in right now, right?
Yeah, we do have a house in Troutdale, Oregon, just outside Portland. But the van is such an awesome tool, I guess, to get to training camps. We can go on trips, stuff like that. It's fully set up so we can sleep in it at any time. We'll pull off the highway and sleep. Wow. But underneath, you can have 5 bikes. There's fork mounts, food, cupboards, stuff like that. The dog loves it. The dog will sleep in the van while we're out training if it's not hot outside. There's a fan and everything. So we really like it. It's like our little mobile training base. And if we're having we can go somewhere and do an open water swim and change or nap in the van and go for a ride or something. So it's super fun. It's not really set up to live in. It doesn't have running water or anything. It does have electricity, so we can charge all our devices and
great.
Be super comfortable for several days. But Eric wants to get a fridge and eventually get solar so that we can be off grid a bit more. But
awesome.
It's a bit of a work in progress, but it's definitely like more than functional now, and we use it all the time. We both love it. Eric did all the conversion inside of it, so he's super handy with that stuff.
Awesome.
Which helps, because they're expensive if you buy them fully built out. Like they can.
Is there an air conditioner?
Sorry?
Can you run an air conditioner without turning the van on?
We don't have an air conditioner, no. Okay. We wish we did, and we're looking into it, because it'll be better. We'd be able to leave the dog in there while in the summer, because we really don't have any threshold for leaving them in, even if it's like 20 degrees Celsius, because that's pretty dangerous. But
nobody even knows what that is.
I don't know what Fahrenheit is. But if the fan's on and the windows are cracked, it's actually stays really cool in there. So
that's great.
Usually we're camping like up on that hood where it gets cold anyway, so we don't need an AC right now. But
very cool.
Maybe someday. There's like a million things you can do to a van to improve it. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that van is never going to be finished.
Right, exactly.
A couple final questions from chat. One of our listeners, watchers, would just like to hear a little bit about your Olympic experience. Like, what was it like? What was it like going? What was the entire thing like? I guess to sharpen that question a little bit, like, what was something that surprised you about the experience?
Yeah, the Olympics were a long time ago now for me. That 2012 London was where I went. I was a lot younger and newer to the sport, and in a completely different position in my career than I currently am. I went a little bit backwards in the sport, where I started really successful, and I was only 19 or 20 when I won my first WTS race, so I instantly had like tons of sponsors, manager, media requests, stuff like that very soon and early in my career, and had to sort of learn all of that very quickly. And it was a bit stressful, like leading into the London Olympics. I had just come off a streak of wins at the highest level in the sport, so I was sort of a targeted athlete to podium and with the Olympics. So I went into that to the games with a different kind of pressure than most athletes usually experience in their first games, where they're just going to get experience and then you perform really well 4 years later. I was going in with like the weight of, I need to come home with an Olympic medal, basically. Like, I'm the best in the world right now, and that's my goal, and that's everyone else's expectation. So that was a lot for a 20-year-old to handle. Mm-hmm. And I was on like cereal boxes and posters all over the country, and it was like a big deal. But at the same time, I was injured the year before the Olympics, like kind of leading into it. So I had this pressure of like, okay, I need to do well, but I'm also not really healthy right now. Mm-hmm. I was pre-qualified, so I didn't have to do anything the year before. I just had to like show up at the games and race. So yeah, that added a whole other dimension to like my enjoyment, I guess. Like, it was really hard to get there and really fully embrace and think it was cool at the time because of all the pressure and stress and like going in not fully ready. So yeah, it was an interesting experience. I think post-Olympics, I had a really bad race. I was like, yeah, it was awful, but I finished, and that made it also difficult to enjoy the experience afterwards because I didn't have a good race, and I wanted to win and get a medal and everything, which was a lot to ask, but was still my goal. So yeah, my goal immediately after that Olympics was to go to Rio and redeem myself 4 years later, but 4 years is a long time to wait for that opportunity again. So a lot can happen in that window. And I never had the intent, I didn't ever feel like I wanted to quit after the Olympics. I wasn't like that frustrated. I was more like motivated to go back and prove myself that I could win or get a medal. So yeah, it was like, I could talk about the Olympics for hours and hours just because it was such an interesting, unique time for me. But like I learned a lot, and I think even now to this day, like 10 years later, I'm still appreciating even more now that I'm an Olympian than I did back when I was 20, because that stays with you forever. And mm-hmm. that is a inspiring thing for kids. And a lot of like my personal goal in the sport is to get people inspired and interested in getting into it, and inspire kids to want to go to the Olympics and get into sport like and stuff like that. So I still go home to Edmonton, where I'm from, and do kids steel events and stuff like that, because kids still know who I am, and that's really cool. So awesome. Even though I didn't have a good race, it's still a real big honor to like be an Olympian for Canada mm-hmm. and to have won. So yeah, I'm like learning more now than I did back then, but I was just like embarrassed and frustrated back in 2012. But I think it's still to this day a cool thing to be an Olympian. So
yeah. Every kid in Edmonton thinks you're a hero, right? That's awesome.
Right, exactly. And I don't feel that way, but like right. It's cool to have them think I am.
That's awesome.
Maybe we can get you back sometime and we'll just talk about Olympics.
Yeah. Happily.
Talk about the Olympics for an hour. Which would be amazing.
It is a very cool thing to be like in the closing ceremonies and to be on this team with other sports. Like a lot of the time we go to a triathlon and it's just triathletes, but I was in like the Canada House with athletes from every single sport. So it's a really cool experience, and you're walking around the village and all the different countries, and it's like unlike any event in triathlon that you'll ever go to. So
it's amazing.
That was cool. Yeah.
Do you taper off caffeine before big races as a caffeine user?
No, I don't. Yeah, I drink coffee every single day. I don't feel good if I don't. But an interesting thing, sort of, is that before 2012 Olympics, I never drank coffee at all. So like every single race that I won, I didn't drink coffee. So I think you can definitely perform well without it. But once you get used to it and addicted to it, so I'll have a caffeine gel before a race and definitely like use it as part of my race plan. But I don't decrease it before the race. I guess I could try it. It seems like it should work, but yeah.
There are a couple. Oh, sorry. What were you saying?
I just like coffee too much.
Agreed. Yeah. No, I would have trouble with that too.
I taper off of coffee before races and ask the athletes that I work with to do the same, and it is miserable.
Got to like replace it with decaf or something.
Yeah.
I have a very detailed step down program.
Pick yourself.
It takes about 2 weeks.
Really? Do you do it that far out? 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'm such a caffeine addict. Like it's pretty bad. Like
So then when you take it on race day, you feel that much better.
yeah, like superhuman.
Like,
it's amazing.
What?
Yeah.
Well, I'm willing to try it. That's cool.
Yeah. It seems to work. The science says you can get off of it in 3 days, but I'm pretty sure that science is also like you could probably kick methadone in 3 days.
Right. The headache will be debilitating, but you can do it. We have a couple of questions about the merch drop for the triathlon life.
Yeah.
Is that happening?
So the shirts I think everything's going to be ready this week. So
okay.
It's been a bit of a process, and more than we expected, because we've never had gear before, tried to sell stuff online. So setting up the website, finding the right shirts that we really like, finding hats that we really like, ordering all the blanks, picking which ones we want, being able to ship it internationally, all that stuff has just been a learning process. And we're kind of we start freaking out when we're like, oh my God, it's taking so long, no one's even going to be interested anymore. But I mean, that's how long it takes. And once we have our process dialed, we have a company that's helping us, and it'll be a lot quicker from now on. But we appreciate everyone's patience as we get it all together. It's been a cool process, getting this logo made and sort of slowly getting gear that we really like and that we're, passionate about and we'll actually use. We got coffee mugs made.
Oh, that's great.
Or was there a logo on that mug? Yeah.
No, but this is the exact mug that will.
Oh, that's the blank. Oh, nice.
The blank. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Yeah, people are excited about it.
Where could someone go to perhaps procure some of this merchandise?
Well, we have a website set up. Is it live, the website? The TCL website.
You can go there and you can sign up to be notified the second.
Right. There's a newsletter sign up. So if you sign up on that, you'll be notified as soon as it's live, and then it'll be all on that website.
It sounds like that's a smart move because there are a lot of people interested.
Yeah, we're kind of we didn't also know how much to order at first because we think there's a lot of people that want to get it, but we don't know for sure. So it's a bit scary to put a lot of money into ordering too much possibly. So what our plan is to release a little bit now, hopefully sell out, and then the turnaround time is pretty quick since we have everything set up now to get the next round of stuff. So the best way to support us and support our channel is to go buy stuff. We haven't put out a Patreon page. We haven't really accepted any other form of help, but we've had a lot of requests of how can we support you guys, because the videos take so much time and a lot of expensive equipment, and hopefully everyone that's watching them enjoys them, finds some value in them. So that's the best way to help us, and we wanted to offer something cool in return, the hats and the shirts and stuff. So if you guys can go on next week and buy stuff, that'd be not you two, but
I'm
going to.
Going.
Yeah,
we're going.
I'm super excited now. I'm gonna go sign up for that list.
So that website, everybody, that is thattriathlonlife.com, and go and sign up for their mailing list and get notified so you can purchase all of the merchandise.
Yes.
I think we have a good last question. Chris, do you want to ask
what is your favorite road to rip on the bike in PDX?
Oh wow, in PDX. Does Troutdale count?
Troutdale counts, yes. We will anywhere out to as far as Hood River.
Yeah, I was just going to say everything to Hood River is Portland, right?
I really like Larch Mountain. We were just talking about this before we went live, but it's really long. It's not super steep, but you can still do intervals on it. And it's a super fun descent as well once you flip around at the top. So yeah, that's my favorite for sure. Usually really quiet, not a lot of traffic. That's always a criteria when I'm talking about favorite roads. I don't like cars. So everyone come out and try it if you live in Portland.
Are you as aggressive a descender as Eric is?
Not even close. So bad. And it's kind of funny because I rode with two of my friends yesterday who are girls, and I don't ride with other people very often. It's mostly just Eric or Heather, and they're both super good technically, so I feel like I'm horrible at descending. But when I'm riding with other people who are a little more reasonable at descending, I'm actually not that bad. So it puts in perspective how good they are at it. And
for sure.
I'm not a super big risk taker, so I'm pretty cautious at descending, and especially in training.
It's reasonable.
Yeah, I've had Eric's life flash before my eyes a few times.
I think he's settled down a bit, but yeah, he's shaking his head he definitely is more careful now. But I don't know. Still, I don't see him, so I don't know what he's doing.
Well, Paula Findlay, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. This was a real treat for both of us.
Yeah,
a real
great.
treat to get to look at your swim stroke. That was a real honor for both of us. So thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, we wish you the best in your the rest of this strange season and your merchandise drop later this week.
I can't wait.
And thanks again for doing the swim analysis. Like, that's not something we get the opportunity to see very often, as like video of swimming. So that's super cool. Thank you for doing that.
Of course.
All right. Well, we will hopefully see you again soon. And for everybody who's joining us out in Twitch land, don't forget to come back again for Yoga with Amy VT tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. We will plan to see you all again soon. Paula, thank you so much. It was just great to get to spend this time with you.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
All right. Chris, you going to take us out with your super cool line?
Yeah, I'll try not to flub it this time. Thank you guys all for watching, and here's to a happier and faster tomorrow.
Bye, guys.